Dreamworks and Disney. Both of these companies have had a mini rivalry this year. After Puss in Boots: The Last Wish came out, everyone started comparing Dreamworks and Disney and how they were getting the upper hand, and how the upcoming films that Disney did have just looked bland and Dreamworks was on top. Well, it's a new year now, and all the films that Disney and Dreamworks have produced is past, with Dreamworks having Ruby Gilman Teenage Kraken, and also having in the later part of the year Trolls Band Together. And in the other corner, you have Disney, which released Elemental in June, and recently Wish, which released last month. And now it comes to the point of, which one did better? Which one did better critically, financially? Really, who won this year? DreamWorks or Disney? That's what we're finding out in today's video. Before we start, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and let's figure out who won the war. Now, in the first corner is Disney. Now, Disney in 2022 did not have a great year. It had Lightyear, which is the most forgettable Pixar movie of all time, for me at least. And you have Strange World, also one of the most forgettable Disney movies in recent times. And both of these movies did not perform well critically or financially. One, on the other hand, just seemed boring, and the other one was just barely promoted. And when people actually gave it a chance, when it came on Disney Plus, it wasn't good. It had a premise, but it was just executed in the most boring way possible. The characters aren't memorable. When you think of Strange World, you think of just a failure of a movie. And it's sad that, they tried an original idea, which could have been something great, but it just fell flat. And as for Lightyear, it sucked all the life out of Buzz Lightyear as a character, and there's tons of videos to talk about why it did. Then getting on to 2023, we had Pixar's Elemental. Now, leading up to this film, a lot of people were either hyped or just, it's whatever, it exists. And for me, I kinda liked it. It was, okay, this movie, I knew from the get-go, was Eye Candy the movie, and had a lot of Zootopia vibes too. I know a lot of people were comparing the two heavily, and I could see why. But my expectations for this movie were kinda mediocre. I didn't really expect the movie to be anything grand. I mean, it is a Pixar movie though, but they haven't been on the best track record. And when I actually watched the movie, it was surprising that it wasn't as mediocre as I thought it would be. Elemental stands on its own, and surprisingly is one of the more memorable Pixar movies that have come out in this decade. And I liked it. I liked the characters, I liked the story, everything about it was good. I mean, there were some plot points that felt a little rushed. I would say that Wade and Ember's chemistry kind of sped up a little fast, but that's usually what you gotta deal with in these types of movies, or it's gonna be 2 hours long. But it works in some aspects, and the story behind it with the director is also touching. So it feels like a Pixar movie. We hadn't had that since, I'm gonna say, like, either Luca or Soul. Both amazing movies, by the way. And in fact, those Pixar movies are coming back to theaters, including Turning Red. So, rare W for Disney. But Elemental had a horrible box office, to start off at least. It had the worst opening weekend for any Pixar movie. Nobody cared about this movie. But something happened. Just as everyone was about to give up on this movie and say, oh, we really are in the downfall of Disney, word of mouth started to lift up the movie. And you know what? It actually started to help. The numbers started to creep up a little bit. And suddenly, the international market was blown up by this movie. It even somehow passed Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, at least internationally, which is really surprising. And you know what? The movie did have a comeback. It came up to $500 million, which currently now is still the highest grossing Disney movie since the pandemic. And that is astonishing. And honestly, do we need a sequel from that movie? No, not really. Maybe like shorts. But I'd say it was mostly Pixar. And well, this movie had some pretty questionable marketing, which wasn't helping the movie's case. But it survived this summer because there were so many blockbusters. June was just a nightmare. But it kind of panned out. With critics and audiences, it was okay. Some people really loved it. Some people were like, they like it, but majority, there wasn't very terrible reviews about this movie. It was just meh. It wasn't anything insane, but it still had the Pixar feel to it, and that's what you come for these movies for. And, well, at the end of the month, Dreamworks put their head in the ring, and, you guys know where this is going. Ruby Gilman, Teenage Kraken. Oh boy, where do I start about this movie? First of all, this movie was also riding off of the success of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Probably the worst comparison when it comes to these two movies. You have a cinematic masterpiece riding off of a fairly new franchise that no one really knows about, and you know, that movie was just not living up to the expectations of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. But the movie had its first trailer release and everyone supported it. Mostly because it was riding off of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Everyone was saying, oh, the animation looks so great. Oh, this is gonna beat out Disney. And then nobody saw it. And this is a problem that Dreamworks did kind of screw. It was mostly Universal. I don't know what happened within the studio, but they screwed over this movie pretty badly. First of all, there was absolutely no promotion for this movie. The first trailer came out in March, which is not a good way to start a marketing campaign. Second, there was just no one was talking about it at all. There was no TV spots, there was not even a billboard. Not even those billboards you see when you're going to a bus stop. Those don't even exist. So I could see why most people didn't flock to the theaters for this movie. And hey, if the movie didn't do well, its first weekend, maybe word of mouth would have helped it. And regarding word of mouth, it was okay. It was like, it didn't break the internet, it didn't smash anything. It was either some people were just meh, it was a pretty predictable story from beginning to end, or they were just like, it's alright, Dreamworks has put out worse. And people gotta understand that Dreamworks is probably the most inconsistent animation studio out there. They could put out Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and then drop Boss Baby 3 out of nowhere. But I'd say Ruby Gilman is like a 7, maybe 6. I still haven't landed it just yet, but it's an okay movie. It has a predictable plot, and I would say that they could have taken the concept a little farther, and maybe they are if anything honestly comes out of that franchise, because it actually is the lowest Dreamworks movie of all time, so chances are we may not see anything from that. And yeah, regarding fans, I mean, there is a pretty strong fan base for this movie still going on today, and you know what, I can respect that. But regarding Dreamworks financially and critically, in June they kind of took the L at that point. But hey now, this isn't the end of the story, we still got another half to go through. And that's where we come up to where it's surprising that we had a Disney and Dreamworks movie release in the same month in June, and it happened again in November with Trolls Band Together and Wish. And that's where we're going to start off with first, because that is the first movie that released, Trolls Band Together. Now, this movie, I just expected to be meh. I'm not really fond of the Trolls franchise. Like I said, the first one is just okay, the second one is pretty bad, and this one I just said, you know what, I'll just watch this movie and probably forget about it like a week from now. But when I walked out of that theater that day, I was confused. Confused that the movie wasn't horrible. And the fact that, you know what, there were some jokes that were really good in that movie. and the movie wasn't like boring or trying to baby you the entire time. And it's weird, man. And when the movie came, and I felt like I was the only one, then the movie released on digital, and everyone was talking about it on how it was like actually good, and then I just started to realize, wait a minute, what just happened? And I realized, yes, the director and writer changed for this movie, and I could see why I liked it a lot more than the first and second movie. Trolls Band Together is good. Like, not bad, not horrendous. It's not the greatest DreamWorks movie out there, but it's worth a watch if you have general knowledge of the franchise, and I feel like you will not be bored, because the movie is carried by certain characters, but I will say the jokes are actually pretty good in this movie, and it doesn't try to baby you. So I would say Trolls Band Together actually was quite a W. And the movie financially is actually doing pretty well right now. It's in the same range as the franchise's norms, so there's nothing really to complain about with this movie. Critically, actually fine. Financially, also fine. So, I'd say DreamWorks takes the slight upper hand here. And now we go back to Disney. And in this corner, oh boy, this movie had so much going for it, and it fell flat in almost all aspects. But Disney's Wish, I'll be honest with you, I was really anticipating this movie. That's surprising, because, Disney hasn't had the best track record lately. But, for this movie to celebrate its 100th anniversary, for it to try something different, and it didn't really try anything different, and it felt like the most lazy way possible of doing it. Like, the animation was different, yes, but I feel like they could have done so much more with it, especially after knowing the movie was originally going to be 2D animated, and it was going to follow things that, made these original films so great. And yes, it did that, but first of all, the soundtrack was not good. The villain song also, that was the just most heartbreaking thing about the movie, because they were hyping Chris Pines up as how he was gonna be this great villain in Disney's Wish. He's gonna be so amazing, and it just fell flat. And people were literally saying some of the songs felt AI generated. Yeah, that's not a good look. And you know what? Fine. If the movie wasn't doing great critically, how'd it do financially? So not great. The movie didn't have the opening that people were anticipating. I was saying, from certain sources, Wish was supposed to have a good opening, but it didn't. And at the time of me recording this, it hasn't even hit 100 million yet, which is a little concerning, because for Disney standards, that's a serious low. And especially for a movie that, is different like this. And, it doesn't seem like it's going to be getting any better, because obviously December is stacked, and I don't see any people really needing to see Wish. I don't see any hype behind it. All I see about it is what the movie could have been and what it's not. And it's sad. It really is. And Disney takes that L in that corner. And now we've reached this conclusion. DreamWorks and Disney kinda took an L on both sides. But what I can say is, one studio had a minor upper hand that I can say still won this year, but by a margin, by a small amount. And I feel like you know the answer to this. But I'd say, in my opinion, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say in the comments about who do you think won, but I think DreamWorks slightly had the upper hand. Now, first, I wouldn't say financially. Disney still kinda has it, mostly because of the bulk of Elemental's box office being, 400 million. And, Ruby Gilman not doing too hot. But I would say on the critical side of things, Trolls is doing great financially and critically, and I would say Ruby Gilman, although it is a pretty bad flop, it does have its fan base behind it that still is somehow going. And honestly, if there was public outcry for that franchise to continue, those people would definitely stand up and, we would hear about it. And you know what? I'd say, there are movies that have done terribly, but still have a fan base today. Hey, and I'd rather have a crazy fan base for a franchise than having, not the greatest of box office, but technically, regarding budget, they didn't lose too much on Ruby Gilman, because the movie only did have a $70 million budget, so it wasn't a total loss. And maybe that was Universal's plan? I don't know what the plan was for Ruby Gilman. It honestly felt like something that was in their vault and they just wanted to throw out. But I'd say they both had ups and downs this year, but I'd say Dreamworks makes it by the littlest. And that's where I would put Disney and Dreamworks currently this year. But I'm curious, really curious actually, to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think won this year, Dreamworks or Disney? Let me know down in the comments, and also thank you guys so much for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate that. I was not expecting that response, but thanks everyone, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace out.